right, good morning or good evening or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another Avid Live Sound webinar. I'm your host this morning, Robert Scovill. I'm a senior specialist for live sound products at Avid, and going to run you through a little conversation today with one of our great customers. Just to run you through a little kind of the mechanics for the day. We're going to have a couple of our specialists in the background answering questions for you. If you want to use the Q&A button in your Zoom window, as you hear things come along in the webinar, if you want to ask some questions and get them answered, we have a couple of guys in the background that can definitely do that for you. We may even pull your question forward for a live Q&A at the end, and try to address those as well there. So at any rate, welcome back. It's been a little while since we did a webinar. I'm looking forward to getting back into this and doing some more of these. So let me get right to it and introduce our guest today. We're going to have the guys at Shoreline Church join us today. They've put together a great workflow at their place, assisted by the guys at Brown Note Productions. So I'm going to stop the screen share here. We'll get these guys on camera. Let's see. All right. There we go. Shoreline. Yeah, there's Jeremy. And let's see if we can get TJ in here. And Zach, you guys can open up your mics and your cameras if you want. There we go. All right. Good morning, guys. Thanks for joining us here today. This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to digging in and seeing exactly what you guys got going on at this church. I mean, it looks really impressive. So I'll take a little time to introduce everybody here. So we have TJ Thornton joining us today. He's the production director and the front of house mixer for all the services at Shoreline. Say hi there. And we got Jeremy Hager. He's the chief audio engineer and the broadcast mixer at Shoreline. And that's going to be one of our focuses today, talking about how to incorporate broadcast mixing and stream mixing into an existing front of house and monitor workflow. And then we got Zach Richards down here. He's the director of integration at Brown Note Productions, and worked really closely with these guys to put together this big system at their church. Okay. So welcome, guys. Good to see you all.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right, so let's just kind of jump right into it. I know we don't have a ton of time here today, but we'll get you guys, get the audience up to speed on your church here. So any one of you guys can go first, whoever feels like you want to go here. But just give us a little background on the church. How long have you guys been around? How many revisions of your build have you done over the years, or that you've been involved in? Have you guys been with this church for a long time?
I can take this one. We've been around for a little over 30 years now, and so based in Austin, Texas. As far as builds, we're in the only build. This church started out in just small rooms, started out in someone's living room, a home living room in a neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And so now we're in the only build. We've had several renovations since, as far as the PA system and front of house consoles. I've only been a part of the church for one console changeover, and that was to Avid.
Right.
Yeah.
Jeremy, how about you? How long have you been involved at the church, and about your role there a little bit?
Yeah. I was hired 2 years ago as the production director, which I have since gladly handed off to TJ. COVID hit, and with the need, because of COVID, positions got shifted around, and it made more sense for me to do what I was doing broadcast wise, since churches had to find their avenue into that, and I had studio experience and background, and so it was something that I was familiar with, and so I just went down that road. TJ and I both share front of house, so we have guys that we've trained up to do broadcast as well in here, and I kind of oversee and teach them, but I'll go out every now and then and play with this SXL when I can.
Right.
When TJ lets me. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's one of those things. But yeah, I got involved 2 years ago, and it's been great. So for TJ and I, it's been relatively new.
Great. Zach, how long have you had a relationship with this church, or maybe these two guys? Did the relationship with Brown Note start with with TJ and Jeremy here, or did you have a relationship with them, as a services or a contract provider for?
Yeah,
in the
no,
past?
it's a great question. No, I've actually seen many iterations at Shoreline over the years, and really happy to be part of the team. And we put a new PA in there several years ago, and new wireless stuff, and so a lot going on over the past, gosh, I'd say 10 or 12 years. But
Oh, that's great.
yeah, in the last couple of years, getting to work with Jeremy and TJ on this console package has been really fun. So we're glad to be
Well,
a part of the
that's
project.
got to be a blessing to have, a consistent integrator and contractor involved with you guys. Somebody that's got some history there and can kind of
Well,
know the
we
ins and outs of
we
it.
very
know
nice.
the skeletons in the closet.
Yeah, I wasn't going to
Yeah,
go there, I
I
promise.
know. Well, it happens with the building, over time, and your cables get piled on top of cables, and it helps to have some knowledge.
I'm sure everybody in this audience can relate to that one. That's great.
Absolutely.
All right. So, I'm happy to say, this makes me really happy to say, a lot of the things we're going to talk about today is how do you pivot out of a pandemic lockdown as opposed to pivoting into the pandemic lockdown. It feels like things are starting to get back to normal a little bit. But, one of the things I kind of stated early on in that pandemic in the lockdown was, boy, this is going to be a great opportunity for everybody to kind of take a breath and get this whole streaming side of the world together. And I mean, it's just going to force us to really understand it and get it in play. And then once we get back to quote unquote normal, we're going to have some really, really powerful things at our disposal. So you guys seem like a textbook case of where that has happened here, so this is going to be cool to talk about. So maybe just a couple more things on the church. How many people do you guys seat in the auditorium on a weekend on a regular basis? How many services do you do? How many people do you seat?
We see at our main campus, we have two campuses. We have a satellite campus as well.
Yeah.
At our main campus, we seat just under 4,800, just shy of 4,800. Of course, it varies service by service.
Sure.
We had a banner Easter this year. I'd say we're close to 80% capacity, if not even a little higher. And that's
Fantastic.
and that's 2 services per Sunday.
Right. That's great, man. Good. Congratulations. That's awesome to hear. Do you have any sense of how many people are logging in and watching your streams?
We stream on multiple platforms. So typically it averages between 100, 125 per platform. Then, of course, there's no way of telling how many people are in that living room.
Right.
You could have
Yeah.
10 people in the living room. You could have, one person watch on the phone. It varies based on what platform we're using. But we do use our internal church website, and then we have Facebook and YouTube as well.
Yeah. I've even seen, some churches where they'll have another facility log into that church and have entire groups of people that are sitting there.
We do that
watching.
for our secondary campus or satellite campus. We do streams directly to that campus.
Yeah. Do you guys do you have an international audience, or is it primarily North America?
We do get lots of international hits, actually.
Great. That's really
We
good.
have a church affiliate in Poland, so we have a lot of attention there to the stream, but we all over the world.
Yeah. But, to me, at least to my eyes, I mean, that seems like one of the most powerful aspects of this entire concept for churches who are trying to increase outreach. I mean, you can increase outreach so dramatically and globally now, as opposed to just, a local geography that you're trying to get to. I mean, the reach is just monumental now. All right, so let's maybe what we'll do here before we get too far is let's just get into let me share up my screen here, and we'll start looking at some pictures of your place, and we can start to describe each one of these stations a little bit. Maybe we can start talking about the motivations to get to some of this gear, etc. Let me get me up and going here. All right, so this is obviously your main sanctuary, right? That's the main. Do you have I failed to ask this when I was talking to you guys earlier. Do you have other student campuses, kids campuses like that, or rooms where you're dealing with this, or is it really primarily this one main big room?
We do have some other rooms, just multi-purpose rooms, but primarily our attention's in this one main room.
Yeah. And this is the one that what's your total capacity there?
Just under 4,800. I have to look up the exact numbers, but
Right.
yeah,
That's great. A beautiful looking facility, man. I mean, it looks really good. All right, so here's your front of house position, right? It looks perfectly placed in that room. So, TJ, why don't you just take us through the front of house position? Let us know what technology you got there. It looks like you got a 32D, but just describe the rest of the package there.
Yeah, we have the 32D obviously running everything. We do incorporate a Waves sound grid server to run additional plugins with the onboard plugins, and then I do run a smart RTA. And then wireless workbench on my left side. So got lovely touch panels on the left and right with some nice swinging arms, make it a little convenient. We also we track a backup, just redundancy. We track a backup of all sessions onto Pro Tools that Jeremy can use for future mix downs or touch ups, and just to have as a backup as well.
Right. Okay, great. So really no hardware inserts or anything there particularly, right? It's just all you're mixing entirely in the box there?
That's correct.
Right, great. I mean, we might as well just park here for a minute. I mean, anything in particular processing-wise that really attracted you to this platform, et cetera? Or, was it the console? What made you kind of go, you know what? I need to get Venue in here.
I've always been a fan of the Venue software. It's just the format. It's easy to follow. I've used it. It's similar to what Jeremy spoke about. I've used it with SC48s. I've used it with profiles in the past, and then it's very user friendly. The workflow is excellent, and then for me, I really appreciate the integration of the plugins and the ability to quickly swap in and out and just allocate everything. I've worked with some systems before where it's challenging, just kind of configuring the IOs for everything, and so this is nice to be, with a drop down menu. I can select it and go.
Yeah. And snapshots, obviously, in this workflow are a big portion of your workflow, right?
Snapshots are a huge plus. So typically on a typical Sunday, my head's on a swivel, watching every aspect of the service. So it's really nice to have that one little next button right there in the middle, compressed to, and as long as I have the mix set ready to go, it's rocking.
That's great. That's fantastic.
It should be said that once, like when we decided to start, when we looked, when TJ and I came in, because we came in around the same time, the other front of house console was on its way out, and we were looking for a replacement. A lot of things that we wanted was snapshots. We wanted the bigger things. A lot of what we do here at Shoreline are last minute changes and require certain things, just like most churches where you go one direction and you have to go another direction. And so we wanted something that we could grasp and understand real fast, that we had a huge history with and a past with and all that. And that's where this really came into play, is because we were so comfortable because of our previous uses with Profile and D-Show and all the other.
So you both ended up having history with Venue and Profile and the others. Then you guys knew that platform when you got there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, it begs the question, what did you guys have in there before? And, really what were the kind of feature sets or the calling cards of Venue that made you kind of go, you know what, we need to move up here, I mean, you can call them out. You can say who was in there before. That's fine.
Well, we had
I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm just trying
we had a Digico SD7 prior to the Avid. And it was a great console. I prefer the workflow, like I said, of the Avid. It was a little easier to navigate as far as with the plugins and everything. We had Jeremy can speak a little bit more to this, but we were having some challenges with it, and it definitely presented an opportunity to upgrade and to make a change. One big thing for us when we had the Digico is our monitor console was an older Yamaha M7. So we decided to really push forward with having just the system integration and consistency between the two platforms. So we do have a S6 as well down in our monitor world.
Right. Yeah. We'll get to that here. So maybe it's time to bring Zach in here really quick. And I mean, obviously as an integrator, Zach, it can be pretty challenging these days if you've got, multiple manufacturers of consoles and, especially consoles, trying to integrate into one of these kind of complex environments. But I mean, were you on board with the whole concept of, the kind of unified platform concept, the whole idea of having a common manufacturer and infrastructure here?
Oh, 100%. And yeah, when we sat down with the team at Shoreline and started talking about what they were looking for in this package, it was clear that we were going to look at a unified platform, that we needed to have communication between all of the systems, and we also needed scalability, because as we know, you think you have enough until you don't, and then and then having that. So the Avid platform just made a ton of sense with that regard. And of course, the broadcast side of it, which I know we'll get to shortly, but no sooner had we gotten the live package up and running that a couple months later, COVID hits it, and
Right.
all of a sudden we're off to the broadcast side, and that was just a very easy transition. A couple of BNC Maddie cables up to the broadcast suite, and we were off to the races.
And off to the races, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. It just made a ton of sense, and we've seen the setup that TJ described in many churches, and it's difficult. So having a unified platform with scalability, expandability, and just a user-friendly platform is amazing.
Yeah, kind of being on the other side of it, it's amazing to watch it sometimes, because I'm around it all the time, so I kind of take it for granted that everybody kind of knows some of these things. But that whole concept of unified platform and its scalability, meaning being able to completely upgrade in terms of I/O, processing power, any of that, without having to change your system out,
Exactly.
is such a secret weapon, so to speak. And then on top of it, to be able to integrate a complete mixing environment inside the box of Pro Tools as a broadcast suite or whatever, people they almost don't believe you when you tell them how easy it is to do. It's like almost, the weirdest way, it almost becomes kind of invalidated if it's not really complex and hard. It's like, well, it doesn't have to be complex and hard. It can actually be really, really simple here, so.
We don't need a big analog split with 64 channels and
Well, sometimes we do, but more often than not, I'll say anymore, we don't necessarily need that.
Robert, one thing I want to add that was kind of key is we did, and I'll just be honest here, we did talk about possibly, the Digico was 12 years old. They wanted to possibly look at upgrading the guts and then doing all that type of thing. And really it was a couple of things. One of them that we haven't talked about was just, again, it was the unified platform and the fact that with the cost of what I could do, we could bring up everything. Shoreline could bring up everything as far as changing out the monitor console and changing out the front end console. And that really just goes back to cost too. I mean, we think the venue is priced right and where it's at. And that was one of the things. But one of the things that I really want to touch on is this system is so teachable. To me, this is the easiest. This is one of the easiest systems to teach. And like most churches, we deal with a lot of volunteers in different positions. We deal with volunteers here in broadcast. We have guys running out of front of house sometimes. And it's just teaching them and getting them up and running on the venue platform is so fast for me. I can have somebody just go in a second. And that's, I think that when we were looking big picture, I was like, this is what I want. I want it teachable. I want to make it fast. I want to make guys that are in monitor world can catch on real fast and go through it, or at front of house. So.
It's really an important hallmark of, kind of our world with venue. And we focused intensely on that, even in the original conception of the D shows and profiles. I mean, that was a big piece of the focus when we were building those consoles, because I mean, in the early days of it in, 2004, 2005, when we were just releasing this stuff, I mean, digital consoles was still really, really mysterious to people. And it's like you had to just make that transition easy. And I think that's really carried on now, almost 20 years later. We're still very focused on that, because you have to be able to operate the thing, and you have to be able to operate it under pressure, and you have to be able to learn it quick. The live sound market needs you to be online and up and going very fast, right? So, yeah, really, really great. All right, well, we'll just keep circling around here. Let's take a look at the monitor position. So this is, obviously you have a 24D here. And I think was it a 112 engine you had here?
It's a 112. It's a 112 engine down there, and then we put the big boy at the 144 at front of house.
Right.
Mainly just because, again, it has to deal with that pivoting and just being able to throw everything we need to throw at it in the kitchen sink at front of house and have the resource and the DSP to do that. Whereas, since we're a church here, Monitor World, we don't have to be that specific with certain. It's really for the band, and so we can get what we need to get out of that as far as that's concerned.
But again, one of those hallmarks of unified platform is, right? I mean, we'll discuss this because you just did Easter services, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. One of the big calling cards of unified platform is that you can upgrade any component for a temporary time. Like if you wanted, like say you had some big thing happening on stage and you said, a 24D is not going to be enough faders for this service coming up at the end of the month. You could literally go to your local sound vendor, bring in another 32D, bring in a 48D, whatever you wanted to bring in, unplug that console, plug it in, plug in the Cat 5s and go to work.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it's a huge advantage. Same thing if you just said, well, we actually need more processing channels at monitors for this big service we come up. Go down there, rent a bigger engine, plug it in, go to work. I mean, it just becomes so plug and play in terms of you don't have to worry about any kind of compatibilities, any of that kind of stuff, other than just being on the right software version. So really important concept in that workflow.
Yeah, it really is.
So obviously, TJ, you're at front of house here. Jeremy, you're at in the broadcast. Do you have another person that is dedicated to run this monitor position?
For monitors, we really rely on volunteers. And just we have some great team members we have trained up from the beginning of the install, and so that's a little bit more flexible there.
Right.
And we also use the Avid app as well. The OnStage.
Oh, the OnStage app. Yes.
So the band really relies on the OnStage app. That's a great tool for them to be able to really coordinate. So in the event that we have a volunteer who's not as trained up, or we don't have a volunteer, we run into situations where we're volunteer driven. So something happens, somebody wakes up late, whatever it may be. It's really nice to have the app to be able to have the band adjust their own mixes, and it's a great tool.
If the viewership here is not familiar with this app, it's an iPad app. You can also use it on iPhone. It's an iOS app. It's free of charge to be able to download and put on your pieces, and you can do up to 16 mixes remotely controlled via those iOS devices. And when I say remotely controlled, I mean you have control over the level of every input on the console within your mix, right? So it's not it's not like where you get 16 sources, or you get 8 sources, or whatever it's going to be. You have every input on the console available to your mix to be able to add it out there. So that would take a huge piece of the responsibility off of that person sitting at the monitor console. It's a full bi-directional control, meaning as the artist changes their levels, et cetera, within their mix, that person sitting behind the console sees those changes happen. He solos up that mix. He's hearing exactly the same mix that artist is hearing. So you can have a really, really efficient workflow, really efficient communication there with it. Works really great. All right, let's just carry on here. We're kind of cruising now. So have you got much going on in terms of processing at that monitor console? You're just you're using primarily onboard stuff? Or?
Everything's on board right now for the monitor world. They're just basic, and it works great. I do have a couple of I think I'm using Imperial Labs Arouser in there. So I'm using some third-party plugins as far as like on the HDX cards that are in there.
Yeah.
But not, and just, I just like the flavor and that for the guys. But a lot of it, I mean, I would say 95% of it is all onboard Avid and all plugins Avid. So and the band loves it. They love the reverbs. They like the EQ. For them, going to this and having it crafted for their ears, for them, it was just a night and day difference overall. And they still talk about it. It's 2 years later, and they're still like, oh my gosh, my ears, such a major difference. So that was great to
That's
hear.
Fantastic. That's good validation there for sure. So when you guys were putting together this entire kind of package here, I'll kind of get Zach back involved here in the conversation. What were some of the main metrics that helped you decide on surface size, engine size, et cetera? I mean, we all know budgets involved, so we don't necessarily need to go there. But what helped you decide what size engines, what size surfaces in any given location?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, as Jeremy mentioned, we wanted to make sure that front of house was robust and scalable. I mean, again, this is you ought to see some of the productions that these folks do. It's
I have no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, the entire backstage is basically a set shop. They are constantly revamping the look and the feel of the sanctuary. So, and I've heard some of the crazy requests that have come, like, hey, we want to bring an orchestra in, or we want to, so we wanted to make sure front of house was fully capable of doing a lot of different stuff. Monitor World, as Jeremy and TJ also mentioned, is pretty straightforward. We're also pretty limited in real estate, and we wanted the desk to be out, closer to the stage. And in the past, it had been back sort of in a sort of closet area. It was not sort of ideal. So we were looking for a small footprint. We didn't need necessarily as many processing channels. And then after that, we started with, the IO count. We are just running a single stage 64. There's a great picture of just kind of how we got monitor position, just a little more front and center. It's still not visible. But yeah, and then a single stage 64, but also knowing that that's something that's easily scalable,
Right. Right.
you know, if needed.
That's great, man. I mean, it looks really fantastic.
Yeah, it turned out well.
All right, let's move over to broadcast here a little bit. This is really exciting here. And I'll just preface this by saying, you guys are joining in the leading edge right here by doing this the way you're doing it here. You guys are doing this as comprehensively and as probably as good a quality as anybody is doing it out there, especially with regards to how it's interfacing, how your workflow happens, et cetera. I mean, I don't care whether you're, NBC or whoever, you guys are right up there with them now in terms of how you're doing this. So it's actually a very, very impressive facility. So, Jeremy, why don't you just take us through this gear-wise, what you got out there? Let's talk about the package you got out there. Now, and obviously, guys, we've just talked about the 2 venue packages. Now we move into S6 and Pro Tools land, where Jeremy is mixing in the box for the stream or for the recording mechanism, right? So just take us through this. You can do it kind of high level. We'll dig in a little bit once we get to the drawing, right?
Yeah. So I guess this would be probably a good time to get into the backstory. Obviously, COVID hit, and churches had to figure out how they wanted to, still continue to have Sunday mornings and services for their wedding. And we were in the same boat in that. And so we, once COVID hit, we would record, and obviously the S6Ls were already in place for that. So we would track everything at front of house, and I would take it home and I would just mix the service down that we tracked, because I had the studio at the house, and then, we'd bring it back, and just the level of quality of being able to have that time to go and do that really, really sank into our leadership. And moving forward, as we started to come out of COVID, the big thing was how can we continue that same level of quality that we're getting when you take the tracks home and mix it, and we mirror everything and we get it back out, and do that in a real-time format. And it just was a natural thing to just stay in and go with Pro Tools, and to go with an S4, and really bring the Matrix involved in that, and just knowing that we could go MADI off the stage rack and have all 64 channels up there, and knowing that we could expand up here if we want to. Mm-hmm. The church has a background of writing and doing its own music as well, and wanted to get more involved in that and do that again at a different level. And so this allowed us to kind of just go, hey, we can expand this in any way, shape, or form that we want to. It handles our needs, Sunday morning or whatever services that we do in the building. But at the same time, it gave us that expandability to go and actually have the studio side of things if we wanted to as well, which is why we kind of opted not to go with like another venue or another console, in the sense of like a live console to do broadcast. It just made this way more expandable.
Well, you touched on a couple of really important things that I don't want to just let fly by here. One is, that it sounds like the leadership at your church really has some sensibilities and some sensitivities toward audio quality, where they could respond to it and say, hey, we love what's going on here. How do we keep this going once we get things back online, right? So, I mean, you should feel really fortunate about that part, that you got somebody who understands it, right?
No, I feel, it's, I know TJ and I feel blessed every day. I can attest to this. Like we do, our leadership really believes in what we're putting out in the message, and really wants to do it at a very high quality. And we want to pursue excellence. That's what we want to do here at Shoreline. And that's what we're trying to do that. And so, this is just one of that aspects of where they were just like, yeah, let's do this, and we put it together with Zach, and they were like, yeah, this is the way we need to go. Let's go this way.
Yeah. It's so
very
great
fortunate
when the leadership
blessed.
is on fire about it too, man. Some really great things can happen, and the second thing I want to touch on here, and I actually think this becomes part of the thought process, and Zach, you're welcome to chime in here if you want on this. When you guys are, because there becomes a decision-making point, right? When you're going to put on that third console that's going to do this other task, it's like, well, are we going to do, what are we going to do with this console? Is it just going to be streaming? Are we going to archive and do things for post? Are we thinking about expanding even further? In your situation, it's clear that the expansion really is just starting. This isn't the end of the expansion. This is the beginning, where you might have a recording studio online, where you might have other people, musicians that are coming in to create content for the church. Now you have a full-blown, state-of-the-art recording studio built here. who can go online and do the same process for the services now. So this, instead of being the expansion, actually at some point becomes the hub, right? I mean, it becomes the centerpiece of the whole thing. So, that can have an impact on whether you go S6 or S4 or S6L in that situation, depending on what you're doing, right?
Yeah,
well, that's exactly right. And yeah, I'll let Jeremy chime in, but we had these conversations about it would certainly be very easy to add another live desk and obviously to do a live stream and still be able to do some capture and so on and so forth. But the vision really for where they wanted to be was to have a fully functioning recording studio that is under development. In fact, the room that's adjacent to this room is now almost finished out, if not finished out, as exactly that. So this really becomes a cornerstone of that process. Yeah, Jeremy, did you have something to add?
Yeah. Oh, no, I was just saying, yeah, it's really just came down to, it is a cornerstone. In a sense, it does a dual purpose. We do. Mm-hmm. We do remixes in here for certain things for Sunday mornings now. For Easter we did some remixing down for some video, so it's starting to get into like the video side of things now. It is one of those things where it's just kind of snowballed into what those things that are coming.
Well, the amazing part that you're going to experience is your quality is going to snowball. Because I think the trap people fall into sometimes is just thinking, well, we're just mixing our music for the service here, But once you start realizing that, okay, well, we can come in here and do all the audio for all of our video clips. We can do all of our interview audio in this studio, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, all of that quality comes up as opposed to, an iPhone mic, capturing somebody's thing. You treat it much more like high quality post, right?
That's really why we designed it this way. Zach and I kind of went round and round a little bit, and he wanted to hear. And that's the great thing about Brown Note and just the integration is he heard everything that I wanted to do and could see possibly happening here, not just from my standpoint, but just knowing just how being at Shoreline for almost a year at that point and seeing the pivots. Again, it comes back to pivots and wanting to be able to move things and do things and change course and be able to do that on a dime and having the flexibility to do that. And this was one of the ways that we could really get that done.
Right. Absolutely, man. All right. Well, let's carry on here. Obviously, you have an S4 there, right? S4 with the screen option. Is that right?
Yes.
Great. And you're using. Well, we'll talk about this when we get to the diagram. Obviously, you're mixing in the box there. Mm-hmm. I saw a couple inserts. It looks like I saw 1176 blue tab there that you're using for some hardware insert. But I'd say for the most part, you're probably in the box there, right?
No, 90% of it. Yeah, 90% of it's in the box. I do. We have a API 2500 that I use on, and we can once you get into the template that I use, we use that on a band bus that I can explain, and then I also use the SSL Fusion mastering thing, which is a great piece of gear. Just because in a way for broadcast, I'm having to do it all. I'm having to mix it. I'm having to master it and send it out. So there are a couple of pieces that I'm like, and that are just fantastic for that. And so to have those, and again, it's building. We have 4 channels of API over here. We're looking at expanding that in the future. You're building in the process of building a studio. You start to build the output side of things too as you go. So
that's right.
But I wanted to be able to use those too. I mean, I think it's a financial thing too. If you're gonna make that investment financially, because we all know what it is when you start buying outboard gear. There's a financial investment in that. Ways to use that in just addition to what you're just using it for. Right. So that I can use it on the broadcast side of things, and I can use it on the mixing side of things, and I can use it on the tracking side of things. That's where you maximize that dollar.
Right. Well, let's kind of jump into a little infrastructure discussion here. And again, we're talking about all these things in this what from a high level looks like a very complex workflow or interconnection, but it's actually very simple when you see it here. So I've kind of taken the liberty of putting this together here. So, and I see one of my drawings is missing here. There we go. So obviously at the front of house you have the 32D and the 24D, and that is all working on a shared AVB loop with the engines and the stage rack, right? You have a single stage rack, looks like it's fully loaded, 64 by 32. So all of that works as a single system essentially, right? And then we're going to take MADI splits right off of the stage rack and head up to an MTRX box. We're going to get Maddie into that MTRX box. That MTRX box is going to connect to Pro Tools via HDX. And then that S4 console is going to take control of the Pro Tools system and actually mix within that and send audio wherever we need to send it, right? So again, it's very simple in the end to do all this. If you thought about what it would take to be able to create this in analog, you know, there would be a whole lot more lines on this drawing, obviously. So, you know, one of the things that we can do on our stage racks that, again, I'm not sure a lot of people are familiar with, but we can do it, and it's actually going to bring me to a question for you, Jeremy, is that we can sample rate convert on that MADI stream that is out of the stage rack. So even though, you know, S6L is locked at 96K, it can only work at 96K. In terms of the MADI splits of those preamps that are going up to the MTRX, that could be at 96K, it could be 48K, you know, other sample rates if you needed to downsample, maybe to session, you know, make the session record at a, you know, lower capacity of the drives, whatever you needed to do, really, you could have those. You could change sample rate there. So I'll stop there to ask the question, Jeremy. Are you remaining at 96K, or are you guys downsampling there?
For right now, I am doing 96K.
Yeah.
I'm just trying. I'm keeping the, you know, I'm kind of an old school guy when it comes to recording, so I'd like to keep everything kind of like where it's at, and then just they're at the end of it all.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there is that flexibility to do the downstream. We just haven't gotten to that where I feel like we need to yet. Probably as we do have the Dante card in the Matrix to send out as a backup thing that goes to a computer in my office, which is right on the other side of the studio, and that's another backup station that we retract to during service. Mainly because we basically use this as like an input through console in broadcast. We don't actually track in here during the service. Yeah. And so having that downsampling, can definitely be a help at some point.
Yeah. So yeah, if you notice up in the right-hand corner there, and if you guys aren't familiar with the MTRX box, I would really encourage you to get to the Avid website and dig up some information on it. It is absolutely a fantastic box in terms of being able to do translations of protocols, do routing, et cetera. And, you know, for my money, it's actually part of the secret sauce of doing an S4 in this configuration, because you have all the control room, like a typical studio control room control, that's built into that MTRX to use in conjunction with the S4. So, you know, that to me, that's kind of one of the dividing lines between whether, well, would we put an S6 in there or an S6L, you know, S4 versus S6L. Well, the S4, S6 environment is way more, you know, the architecture of it is way more focused on doing a proper control room, where you would have to kind of manufacture that a little bit with S6L. S6L is considered a live console. You're not going to have all the normal control room functionality on it. So again, just one of those reasons to have it there. I noticed on your MTRX you also have 24 inputs and outputs that I believe when we talked about it, you said they were set up for some future features in the studio that may get built or not built, you know, that is going to attach to that room, and then also works for inserts, some hardware inserts for your local, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I knew I wanted some hardware inserts in here, and I knew we would be tracking stuff and retracking stuff in here, so yeah. I needed a way to do that, and so that's where it just made sense to put the 24 in and 24 out on the Matrix. In fact, this is where having an integrator is super key for me in this kind of environment. So I was unaware of the Matrix at the time. Mm-hmm. And Zach was like, hey, I was just on the phone with Avid. You know, I think they just come out. You guys had just come out with the Matrix line at that point. It was maybe a month out, I think, because it's only come out. It was Zach, you can say otherwise. It hadn't been out that long though, I don't think. Right?
Yeah, you're correct. It was new to the market, and again, just a phenomenal piece, because really, you know, between all of the I/O, all of the different card options, because it is configurable, right? So we're talking about, you know, a frame that you can configure. So we sat down with Jeremy and the team and said, you know, what do we need? Oh, we need Dante. We need, we need some analog inputs, analog outputs, you know, all that. And there's still space for us to continue on that. We have the clocking on it as well, so we can get everything synced up. So it's really just a fantastic piece, and absolutely, you know, new to the market, and one of the things that really makes this whole thing click. So
yeah, I mean, I don't want it to be lost on anybody just how, you know, kind of critical and, you know, how much leverage that box has in this design here. I mean, it's taken Maddie in, it's taken that same Maddie in and spitting it out Dante. It's taken that Maddie in and spitting it out HDX. I mean, it's just, you know, you can do just about anything you want it to do there, you know. So,
it really is the stage rack of the studio, which is kind of crazy to think about. It really is.
And then on top of it has the additional analog I/O. And, you know, I'll dispel any myths about that box right now because I've been on it for quite a while now. It is an incredible sounding analog interface. The analog portion of that box sounds just unbelievable. It's so good.
So I was a diehard, and I'll say this straight. I was a diehard Apogee fan for decades, and then I heard the conversion on this, and I was like, yeah, I'm fine.
I'm good. I'm good. All good to go.
Yeah, I'm good.
So TJ, let's get back to you for a second. You know, I have Pro Tools rigs designed into that front of house and monitors, but I think you're probably just using Pro Tools at front of house, right, for virtual sound check stuff. You are doing virtual sound check?
We are doing virtual sound checks, and that's a great tool. That's a tool that was new to me, even with past experience with Avid. Once this system was installed, and it's fantastic. Again, just we have so many things going on throughout our weeks, and just working with volunteers. It's great to be able to track those sessions and run them back with a virtual sound check, and really dial in mixes, and then allow people a safe place to play with mixes. And really train and really get to know the console without mics being muted mid-service. This is a safe place to learn. So it's a great tool.
Obviously being involved with the virtual sound check since day one, I think that's one of the biggest improvements or biggest assets that I think it's brought to this market is allowing people to learn how to mix when there's nothing at stake.
Yep.
I mean, previous to virtual sound check, I mean, you weren't going to get to mix unless there was a band on stage or there was people sitting in the audience, So, I mean, they were going to hear you learn. And here you have the ability to do that in a very relevant and very real way offline, So it's a huge asset to the church market, I think.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're kind of coming up on our time here. Is there anything you guys want to talk about? Any topics that we actually missed here? Yeah, because it can happen. I can do it. I can miss a topic. So if there's anything you guys want to jump in and talk about, I'll let you throw it at me here. So.
Oh, covered everything.
Yeah. Everybody's good. Well, I'll just say thank you guys for sharing your time with us. I feel like we're going to come back and address this again someday, and it's going to be about twice this size. I just get the feeling it's going to be like that.
Sorry, Robert. I had some questions. I was on mute. One of the things that I keep getting questions about, and I think I sent you a question on this, seems to be really a bit more about the routing between the systems. Like sharing preamps, clock, that sort of thing. I mean, there were varied questions on this, but they all kind of got down to this wiring diagram and how Shoreline is looking at all of this and the clocking and what have you.
I can answer that.
Okay, go for it.
So here we run an analog HDX clock out in Monitor World, and that's clocking all of the devices. So we have a lineup here that's clocking the Matrix, and that's also clocking both SXL consoles in Monitor World and the engines. So that's our internal clock as far as like.
So you do have a house sync clock in place.
And that's one of the reasons again why I'm staying up at 96. Because we're all in the same loop on that aspect. So.
I will tell you this, and it's not meant to embarrass anybody here, but if you are doing that external clock, you only need to clock one of those engines.
Yeah, it is only clocking monitor, and then it links, except for it does come up. I do have a lineup here specifically though to the Matrix off that.
That's important to understand in those systems is that when you're in a looped share like this, it is essentially operating from a clock perspective as one system. Right, so there only needs to be one clock injection into that entire system there, and it will chase it. So yeah, just a little side note there. But yeah, that's great. That's exactly how you should be.
I think the question was the preamps too. They were asking about shared preamps or how we share preamps in here, especially with broadcast. Yeah, I'm dependent on. It was at front of house. TJ and I've talked actually about moving preamps back. We had preamp control at front of house. We're probably going to move it back down to Monitor World, mainly just because he gets busy at front of house, and I need to make an adjustment here. And since we're all sharing the same gain staging, up here and broadcast during a Sunday morning, it's easier for me just to kind of run down to Monitor World and make a change. And as far as like anything, and run back up, because it's literally out the door and down the stairs, and I'm right there on the stage. So, but that's just come with the learning process. And we kind of have a level here on the meters. I run Pro Tools for Sunday mornings, especially here in the like meters are in the venue format. So I'm seeing exactly what he's seeing meter wise.
Good call.
On the inputs, and we just basically gain stage it at that level that we feel is appropriate. And so it's hitting my compressors and EQs and everything like I want to in here, and it's doing the same thing for him out there. So but that's how.
Well, Jeremy, I'm going to save you a lot of legwork here, because you and I are going to go offline, and I'm going to show you how to do LAN access to the console.
There we go.
And how to use gain guests, and you're going to set all those gains that you need to see set sitting right from that chair right there.
Totally fine for that.
Oh yeah, one of the other questions I'm getting is your kind of your workflow things, and I think you've answered kind of a lot of that. But your front of house monitor work.
You mean just the workflow between front of house and monitors?
Yeah, like the sharing and passing stuff back and forth.
Well, I don't really, I'll answer for you guys here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really get the sense that they're necessarily sharing anything or passing anything back and forth, but obviously in the shared loop situation like this, one console is going to be in charge of the analog preamp gain, right? So everybody else will essentially be working on the backside of it in trim. So, you know, one console is establishing an analog input gain and an A to D conversion, and then everybody else is sharing the D portion of that. So as Jeremy was talking about, they're thinking about moving that console that is in control back to monitors so that they can do that. But who knows, maybe with the LAN control, you could just, you know, pick which console you want it to be, and everybody can have control of it. So you guys can chime in on that if you like there.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I don't know about sharing, like it's pretty independent, TJ. You can kind of, I think it's, you know, for us, it all goes like, goes to the stage block. It splits three ways. Yes, one person always has to be in control in the preamps on that side of things. But as far as mixes is concerned, the band pretty much takes care of itself. And again, I think that just comes back to the on-stage app, you know, and they're handling their mixes internally if we don't have a monitor tech. But otherwise, you know, we don't do any monitor mixing from front of house at all. It's all, that's just strictly for front of house, and our monitor console does everything for our monitors. We don't really,
you know, it would probably be valuable for me to kind of just give an overview of how our gain sharing works, our input sharing and gain tracking works, because it is unique in the world here. I think we're the only ones that actually do it like this. And, you know, once it's established and once you know who is the master of the rack, I mean, obviously you know who it is, you know, the rest of the consoles that are on the share really don't even know that the other person is in charge, because each console, whether they're in master or not, has the complete range of gain available to them, right? So, you know, I mean, I'll give you an extreme example of this. I wouldn't suggest this, but it's just to demonstrate how it would work, right? Short of establishing phantom power, that has to be done by the master. But if we're talking about gain only here, once you powered these systems up, even if the analog gain had not been set in any way, shape, or form, the slave console has that entire range of gain available to it. So it can go ahead and set gain and get working. And then as soon as that master console makes a gain change, it automatically subtracts. It pushes and pulls that other console to keep its gain the same. That slave console would never even know that the master went ahead and set analog gain there from the perspective of gain. So it's an absolutely fantastic way to work. It's, you know, I mean, it's just the most seamless of it of any of the systems out there that I've seen for sure. All right, so we'll just move on to Q&A here. Paul kind of took us into Q&A, so we'll just keep it going here for a few minutes. Let's see, Paul, have you got other questions in the queue that you want to kind of throw out there, or anything that we need to dive in and talk about?
Sorry, I didn't. I thought we were too. I've been getting a few questions on the iOS app, all of that.
Right. So if they're wanting to know what the iOS app is, it's called On Stage. So I believe it's Avid On Stage or Venue On Stage. I can't remember now which one. But if you search it in the iOS library, it's in there. And the function pad is called Function Pad, Avid Function Pad. They're two separate apps that can be used for some remote control of the console. You can get it on the Apple Store, no doubt about it.
I'm seeing a question that came up in the chat having to do with, I guess, more of the budget planning for this project, and I can just chime in real quick on that.
Yeah, by all means, get in there.
So absolutely, the question is, did we prepare a full proposal package for them? And one of the reasons that I think we really enjoy working with Shoreline and other clients in this sort of collaborative fashion is that we have, a lot of times we're trying to come up with a solution, and it does need to fit within a budget. So this project in particular was a long process of looking at options, pricing those options, sort of budget modeling things, working with TJ, working with Jeremy and the leadership there to, come up with this solution. And budget is always a consideration. Mm-hmm. But as Jeremy mentioned earlier, the value that we were able to get out of this system just made it absolutely make sense for this application.
Yeah, tell me if this reads to you there, Zach. One of the value adds that we always kind of present with Unified Platform is, you can start out at a relatively small level in terms of your system design, right? And then as you grow, as your production needs grow, you can start to interchange more powerful devices without these huge CapEx spends to do that, right? You can keep the core architecture Absolutely. There, et cetera. It makes it for a really graceful ascent into bigger and more capable systems, and you can let somebody get in relatively small in budget and then grow over time, right? As opposed to having these big churns of completely replacing technology every few years,
Oh, that's absolutely it. And in case it wasn't clear in talking about this project actually was done in sort of phases. So the live desk part was first, and then the broadcast studio got added. So it went through several iterations to get to the budget that it needed to be for each phase. But the knowledge that we can add, expand, scale, any of that down the line is huge, and without a huge amount of expense, depending on what it is.
Right. Well, again, guys, just stellar job here. I'm really impressed, and you guys are going to kind of be trendsetters here a little bit. We're going to see this more and more and more out there. I can just feel it coming, where people are pivoting out of lockdown now. They've got it really sorted out, and all of these media presentations and archives for people are just going to become such high quality now. It's really refreshing to see it in play. We build all this technology to do this sorts of things. It's great to see some people really leveraging it and using it. It's great. All right, Paul, if you got anything else, I'll give you one more shot here, and then I think we're going to wrap this thing up.
Yeah, no, I only had one question from one of our guests, which was really directed towards the Shoreline guys of why they're having the gain control on the stage box, the gain control on the stage box being controlled by the monitor console rather than the front of house console, when the front of house console has more inputs to it.
We're still, I can answer that. We're still in talks about it. So currently right now we have it at front of house and it's nice and accessible. But again, we get busy. And so like what Jeremy was speaking to, a lot of it is proximity of where he is positioned. And it sounds like Robert's going to change our world there and save Jeremy some steps. So yeah, and speaking to the gain structure, like Robert was saying, we've never had an issue. There's never been a situation where we've set the gain and it's drastically different somewhere. It compensates so well. It's fantastic. And
when you're using it, if somebody turns on just the monitor console, they can grab the gains quickly. It all remembers everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Correct.
Yeah. The one important caveat to all of this, even my explanation of how the gain works, is the recording portion, right? The Pro Tools, because Pro Tools takes its levels directly from the A to D conversion, right?
Yeah.
So if that preamp is not spun up to a good level, you're going to record at a very low level, right? So that's the one element where you have to kind of be aware, okay, if I'm going to be tracking these inputs, I've got to spin up this gain properly, right? So, just to keep, flogging the dead horse here, I try to encourage people all the time, man, use that gain guess feature on those inputs, and you're going to have input levels that are optimized for the venue transport throughout the system and also for Pro Tools recording. It just takes all the guesswork out of it. No pun intended there, right?
That's all the questions I got, guys.
All right. Well, I'll throw this out there just kind of as a wrapper here. Zach, I'll give you the first opportunity. If somebody wants to reach out to you and ask you some questions, maybe directly, or contact you about possibly getting having you do some work for them, where would they reach you at?
Well, absolutely. I appreciate it. And thank you for hosting too, and for everybody at Shoreline and the team at Avid for making this all possible. Really
Sure, man.
appreciate it.
Sure.
We're at brownnote.com. You can reach me at zachr@brownnote.com. That's ZACHR @brownnote.com.
Great, man. I wish you luck there. Jeremy, TJ, if people want to reach out to you and say, okay, tell me about exactly what you're doing there. Do you want to be available for some questions or some input there?
I'm always available for questions. So, I harbor no knowledge. I will pass on what I know. I'm still learning every day. So, we'll learn together at that point. But they can reach me at jeremy.hager, Hager, at shoreline.net. If they have any questions about what we're doing here or stuff like that. So,
and it was Hager, Hager or AR?
ER.
Jeremy.
Hager. Mm-hmm. Yep, at shoreline.net.
Okay, TJ, you up? Are you game?
I'm game. Yeah, just shoreline.net is the website, and it's tj.thornton at shoreline.net.
Okay. Well, I hope you guys just get inundated with questions. I hope that's how this all goes. Okay, I'll say it.
We're just going to send them over to you, Robert.
Perfect. Just forward them over.
Well, if you guys want to reach out to me, if you got questions on this or you need some clarification on it, you can reach me, obviously, at robert.scovill, Scovill, @avid.com, okay? So be careful what you put in your subject matter. You might get caught in the spam filters, but, I'll try to answer anything I can as time allows, okay? All right. On that note, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you very much for attending. Guys, to my guests, thank you so much. You guys were really great today. I appreciate all the info. And we'll hope to see you guys on another Avid Live Sound webinar. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.